Hello friends, welcome to my channel. Today we are going to discuss about installation of WebLogic. In this topic, we will discuss about system requirement, downloading of WebLogic from Oracle portal, and we will discuss about WebLogic installer types and installation modes as well. After that, we will follow by installation demo on Windows platform and installation demo on Linux platform. This complete topic I will cover up in 3 sessions. First session would be mostly on theory part where we will understand the requirement and to keep our system handy for the installation, and next session would be demo on Windows, and the last session would be also demo on Linux platform. So let's understand the basic system requirements. Here I have captured the most basic requirements like memory requirements and the disk requirement, processor requirements, which is needed for the installation. When we are planning to install WebLogic on any platform, so we have to raise request that we need this much of physical memory, this much of disk space, and minimum CPU requirement. So as per the Oracle recommended or Oracle site, I have captured the basic minimum requirements, but that would depend on our actual requirements when we are installing the WebLogic, with which environment we are installing, whether it's for development. So development we can install on the basic platform or basic server, but when we go for the production, so we need to have a higher side of capacity, maximum capacity we need to plan on max time. Accordingly we can plan this one, and for more details we can refer on the oracle.com site where system requirement and specification is there. I'll share this link in the description. So most system requirements is there, and you can go and read them. So here, like WebLogic can be installed on Linux, Windows, and Unix platform. So what is minimum physical memory is required is Oracle suggested 4 GB and available memory 8 GB. The total memory on the server should be 8 GB. That is the minimum requirement. So available memory is also included your swap space, and disk space here I mentioned 2 GB, but Oracle basically recommend 1.18, 1.8 GB something, that is for storing our Oracle binaries after installation. But when we talk about the production or other environment, so disk space mostly more than 50 GB or 100 GB around, as it will keep growing when we have our application live. So log size get increased when we apply the patches. So patches binary is also added. So that all these things we need to consider when we are. So here, as I mentioned, the physical memory is the amount of physical RAM installed on the host, and the minimum available memory, which includes swap space in addition to the physical memory. The memory requirement, so actual requirement, as I mentioned, it depends on the how many managed servers we are creating and how many middleware products we are configuring on a particular host, and the applications which we are going to host on our managed server, how much maximum heap size would be allocated to that. So based on that we can calculate the memory requirement. Here we will just understand this requirement with an example. Suppose in production environment we want to allocate memory to our server. So we need to consider like how much memory our operating system and other software would be needed, and how much memory would be allocated for the our managed server. How many managed servers we are creating? Are we also having an admin server? So how much memory we will allocate to our admin server? So let's understand this with an example. Suppose if we are planning to configure Oracle WebLogic Server domain with an administration server, two managed server, then you could use the following formula to determine the minimum required available memory. And in that formula, 3 GB we are allocating for operating system and other software, 3 GB for admin server, and 6 GB for two managed server. It means 3 GB max for the one managed server. So total 12 GB physical memory we can and another requirement for installation of WebLogic is the Java. So Java should be installed on the operating system, or if it is not installed, we should install it first. And Java should be a certified JDK. And here Oracle has their own Java, so we can download the Oracle Java and install on our server. Also here Oracle recommends the Java which we are using for our WebLogic should be installed in a separate location other than the default location or default Java. So, and the processor here Oracle recommending 1 gigahertz CPU minimum is required. But as I mentioned, in a production environment or real time, this can be increased, and this should be suggested as per our requirements, like 4 gigahertz or 8 gigahertz, based on our load on the server. And also, we need to, when we are installing the WebLogic, we need to consider the temporary disk space. Temporary disk space is basically when we run the installer. So installer extracts the files that are needed to install the software on the target server and store in a temporary directory. So temporary not providing the temporary directory. So installer use the default location of the temporary directory. In Windows platform, we set the TMP system variable. So by default, it will use that TMP system variable and store the temporary files in that directory. And in Unix also we define a system dependent temporary directory. And if you want to use our custom temporary directory, then we can use this variable, that is -d java.io.temp directory, and we can define here temp directory path or temp directory location. For example, for Windows platform, we want to install the WebLogic, so we can refer this command, and that is java-d java.io and temp directory. There's a temp directory variable, and -j and the installer, WebLogic installer. So now let's talk about the WebLogic server installers. WebLogic basically provide multiple installer types. First is generic installer. Generic installer is a complete installer for all platforms, including Linux and Windows. And it contains binaries, coherence, samples files, and it supports both GUI and silent mode. Quick installer is a lightweight installer that contains all the necessary artifacts to develop and test the application, and that is basically used for the development purpose. Supplemental installer. Supplement installer is an optional supplement quick installer, and that contains samples, examples, and other similar components, and that must be installed after the quick installer. And another is the Fusion middleware infrastructure installer, and that is required to add Fusion middleware control, and Java required files for managing multi-tenant domain with multiple partition, and that must be installed after the generic or quick installer. And there is another installer as well, that Slim installer. And Slim installer is basically for a containerize, where we are using a Docker or a Kubernetes, and in that way we want WebLogic image, so we can go with a Slim installer image. And more detail on the installers, we can refer our WebLogic site. Here we can see the WebLogic installer types and their features, and we can review and read uh, this page and understand about all the installer types and their. I'll say the link in the description. Let's go back to our presentation. And here WebLogic Server generic installer. So let me talk more about it. And as I mentioned, it is a production focus installer. So where we want to have our production environment, so we can go with a generic installer and can be used on Linux, platform, and other platform as well. And it requires pre-installed JDK, or if it is not pre-installed, we can install the JDK once, and then top of the JDK we can install our WebLogic binaries. And it can be run silently or GUI mode. And it contains the WebLogic server, coherence, administrative tools, database support, files, and examples. And another like WebLogic quick installer, and that is basically for development and testing focus, and have a much smaller download and install footprint. And it does not include the GUI interface. And it also install in a current directory by default. If we want to change the installation directory, we can provide a Oracle Home, and it includes a quick and supplemental installer like WebLogic Server Core, Runtime, Temple, WDB, and other. And that installer is also patchable, and that can be patched by the OPatch utility. Now let's talk about the WebLogic Server installation modes. And WebLogic can be installed in two modes. The one is the graphical mode and another is a silent mode. Graphical mode is an interactive and GUI-based method of installation. Silent is a non-interactive command line method of installation. Request silent mode with a -silent option. When we are installing our WebLogic, we need to pass -silent option, and also -response file, where we will give our response file path. And the response file is contain the installation required details.